Welcome to the KDrama Show. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Kim.
We're here to unpack your all-time favorite Korean dramas and chat about all the reasons that we find these shows so charming.
And so addictive. And we know you do too, so settle in with some ramyeon and a boba tea while we dive into the KDrama Show with Ashley and Kim. Sugar? Hey, stop it. S-T-O-P. I-T. It's Oklahoma in the middle of the...
Kim just tried to yeet herself.
Before my eyes.
Dumb ways to die.
She was trying... She's recording a podcast and stepped on a chair. Welcome back to the Slap Happy Show.
Join us. We just started.
It is currently 9:30 at night, and we are in it for the long haul. We have a plethora of things to cover with this show. We are super excited about it.
And we actually get to look at each other.
Yes, we get to stare into each other's eyes and talk about
Park Seo-joon.
Yeah, I almost said Young-Joon, and I was like, that's not it. I know that's not it.
Previous show.
Previous show. Should we...
I'm going to have you do the recap.
We're going to... Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm going to throw this at you this time.
So is this going to be my job for this show? The recap is going to be my job for this show?
Do you want it to be your job, or should we just take turns?
I have mixed feelings about this.
I think you should try it, because it's sort of intimidating.
Sure, I can do it.
You got this.
Okay, so... through the last show, I did like 3 or 4 bullet points of important moments from the show, just because I needed to do it for myself to take notes for the next episode.
Right.
And I almost did that today, and then I thought, Ashley's got it covered.
Oh no!
And then you do this to me.
I would say I'm sorry, but you got this.
But you're not. I know.
Did,
it's okay. So Episode 1 of GyeongSeong Creature, we meet all of our important people. We have Jang TaeSang, who's the master of House of Golden Treasure. We have ChaeOk's and YoungGwan, who are a couple of sleuths from Manchuria, I believe.
Oh, they're from Joseon, but they've traveled.
They're from Joseon? Okay.
They've traveled to Manchuria.
Okay, so a couple of sleuths who are very good at their job. And they are teaming up to try to recover this woman named Myung-ja on behalf of Commissioner Ishikawa. And they're kind of starting to realize that they're getting in pretty deep with some of the higher-ups, I think, in the Japanese hierarchy of things. And we also learn of a man named Sachimoto that the sleuths are actually looking for, who has hints supposedly to the whereabouts of ChaeOk's mother, which is why those two even got into the business in the first place, is because she's been missing for 10 years, and there's a bunch of cold trails, and they've really not made it very far with their search for her. We also are introduced to something called the Najin, which are these freaky looking worms that...
Think Demogorgon from Stranger Things.
Yes, apparently...
But in worm form.
Play some form of role in creating what we would assume is called the GyeongSeong Creature, given the name. And at the very end of the episode, Sachimoto is called in to draw something, which is his job for the military. And it's some abomination in a cage that used to host a woman and now hosts something with really long arms.
It's very terrifying.
It's terrifying. And then we ended there.
And a quick PSA. I know we did it for the first episode of the show. This is a very intense show. There's a lot of violence and gore. So if this is not...
There are themes of suicide and genocide, and so if those are things that
torture.
You're not comfortable with, we would advise you to
not listen.
Go back and listen to our last show, and then meet up with us again in a few weeks when we cover
a different show,
which
won't be as intense.
No, we're gonna juggle these different themes around a bit.
It's a bit intense.
But we're glad you're here. So, should we jump into
We'll jump
episode
right
2?
in. Yeah.
All right.
So episode 2, we start off with Sachimoto, and he is the artist from episode 1, and he is interviewing with this director Ichiro, and he has applied to be an artist because, you know, all around the world people are trying to get more and more depth with their knowledge for like medical world, just like in general, and so he has been hired to basically illustrate an anatomy book, but to follow everything that's going on at this hospital, and it's OnSeong Hospital. And so he's just supposed to be there to record what's going on, take pictures, draw pictures of everything that's happening.
Right.
And he's a very, very good artist. I do massage, so I am all about like the skeletal system, the muscular system, and like looking at the pictures that they have, like those are like
Legit.
so well done. However, he has no idea what's actually going on in this hospital, and he gets pulled in. One of his very first assignments is he's pulled into this room, and it's this man strapped to a table, and there's all these doctors around. Director Ichiro comes in, and they just start experimenting on this person. It's horrible, and Sachimoto's appalled, and he's abhorred, and he's like, what did I just get myself into? And he actually leaves the room and like vomits, and he's like panicking, and you can hear in the room this man is screaming, but then you hear the director, Sachimoto, get back in here, like this is what you were hired to do. And he's dragged back into this room, and so he's being broken down as a person to have to see this and then have to draw this, and his mental health is not well after being exposed to this, because this is not what he signed up for at all.
Well, the reason he even took the job was because the pay was higher, clearly for a reason.
Yeah, you didn't know you had to be a little bit twisted in the head to even attempt to handle what's going on.
Right.
And one of his moments of just breaking down, he's like in a supply closet, and this woman comes in, and she's putting like some cleaning supplies away, like a mop and a bucket or something like that, and he's just bawling because he's
holding the money he was given for the work.
Yeah, he's not coping well. And this woman just looks at him, and she's just like, you'll get used to it, everyone else does.
She says, there's no need to cry, you get used to it soon enough, just like everyone else here. That's the thing about humans, we're quick to adapt to anything, whether it be longing or anguish.
And I don't know if he takes comfort in that, or just is like, great, this is what I have to look forward to.
Yeah.
Almost. Like deadening himself.
We realize, though, that this whole situation is actually him remembering the woman that he is now seeing become this awful experiment that Kato has created in the cell as it's lunging at him, because he sees the medallion on her chest and recognizes it as being the woman from the cleaning closet.
And from a year ago, that's when he first encountered her. So he's been stuck. He's been stuck in this hospital for a year, and just not. Yeah. Life is not well, and so when we ended episode 1, that is who he is drawing, and so then we just kind of see these pretty grotesque and intense pictures that he is drawing, and you just can't help but feel really bad for the guy, because it's just...
Yeah, It's hard, because part of you is like, why doesn't he walk away? Well, it's because he would end up on the table. And there's no getting away from it. One man against an army, and that's kind of the theme of
what's happening
of where we go with the next couple of episodes. But we transition to ChaeOk and JyeongGwan, who are debating whether the benefits outweigh the risks of aligning with TaeSang. And ChaeOk says she has the same feelings she did on Manwal Island, which is another job that they had worked, where JyeongGwan, her father, had been badly injured. But he tells her that this will actually be their last effort to locate ChaeOk's mother together. He really just wants her to go live a normal life and follow her dreams, which, you know, that's kind of a familiar theme.
Hey, I've heard that one before. Well, because they've spent 10 years looking for her, and so she doesn't know what normal...
That is not a small amount of time.
No, that's not a quote-unquote normal life to lead anyway.
No. So, under the cover of nightfall, ChaeOk is doing some reconnaissance around Commissioner Ishikawa's home, which is very heavily guarded. And from a rooftop, she is actually able to see Ishikawa pacing his home while Lady Maeda is in another room sending a letter via rickshaw messenger, clearly apart from her husband's knowledge. And ChaeOk follows the man and sees him enter a building with director Ichiro. Mm-hmm. So some puzzle pieces are coming together here. She knows something is up. Mr. Gu, back at the House of Golden Treasure, is convincing TaeSang that MyeongJa is truly just a lost cause, while their tail, Mori, is lurking.
Oh my goodness. That was a great scene, because they're talking about, like, hey, this is, hoping we find a lead, and he just leans over to TaeSang and he goes, it is getting very hard to pretend that they're not being so obvious. Like
they're not even trying to conceal the fact.
It's just, like, I don't know. He's literally creeping behind them in his car.
In a car, like 10 feet away.
And not even like, hey, I'm parking here at the end of the street and I'm watching you walk.
Or walking, trying to be covert about it. It's just, I'm here. Here I come.
I'm following you.
I love their dynamic. Their dynamic. It's those moments you need in a show like this to sort of lift the mood just a tiny bit.
And to not be so heavy.
Yes. It reminds me a lot of Sarah from
or Yushi.
So, back at the House of Golden Treasure, Bomo is actually being kicked around by this group of Japanese men trying to pawn something. And thankfully, TaeSang comes to his aid and lets them know that, this is a fake. This isn't real picture porcelain.
What's funny is, in episode 1, this man actually came in to try and sell, and Mr. Gu told him, this is fake.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you pee in. Like, this is a chamber pot.
I can't help you.
Like, I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Yeah.
Sorry about your luck. And what's hilarious is this man looks at TaeSang and he goes, then tell me why I spent 100 won on this. And he goes, I can't help it if you were scammed. Like, that's not me.
That's a you problem. But TaeSang comes in and they start to mock him, saying that the rumor mill is saying he's going to lose everything anyway, so just give him some money and send them on their way. Mm-hmm. And it escalates. He kind of insults them, with the whole chamber pot thing. And then they go to pull their swords and everyone in House of Golden Treasure pulls a gun. And I was just like, don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
That's right. But it's just, this whole interaction is going on and Miss Nawal just comes down the stairs and you can see she's just like holding something to her side. You don't know what it is quite yet.
She's no
pushover. But yeah, you can obviously see that she's carrying something. Not sure what, but then when she pulls out, it's like a shotgun.
Oh yeah.
It's not it's a rifle, but I'm pretty sure it's a shotgun. But then Mr. Yu comes in and he has his gun. Bomo pulls out a little handgun. Mm-hmm. And TaeSang's like, okay, like, you guys need to get out. And Mr. Gu just like starts to lower his rifle and he's like, it's so heavy. And he just is,
my arm's getting so tired.
The aim goes from, the head, shoulder down. And the man just follows the gaze of like the line of sight for the rifle and is just like, door's right there. Okay,
I'm gonna
take myself out.
Bow out now. So Nawal lets TaeSang know that the sleuths have found the last place that MyeongJa had visited. With some encouragement from ChaeOk, it's this rickshaw puller had admitted that he had taken MyeongJa to this Japanese-only OnSeong hospital. Mm-hmm. And by encouragement, I mean she had him tethered to a motorcycle and pulled him up a tree.
And he was hanging by his feet.
He was hanging by his feet. So
I need to start employing that tactic. That sounds like a great time.
Plausible deniability, let's leave that out.
Okay.
The team then uses this information to make a plan to sneak into the hospital to further investigate where she may have gone.
Well, and with this hospital being for Japanese only, you have to have a permit to get in.
Right.
And so ChaeOk's just like looks at TaeSang and she's like, okay, well then are you going to get us in? And he's like, yeah, I can do it. And she's like, okay, no, be honest though. Like, is that really something that you can handle? Like, can you actually do this?
She calls him out.
And she's like, you can't do it. So like, we're just going to figure it out. And he just is like, Can you stop? Like, I'm trying to think. Things need to be planned. You don't need to be so impulsive.
Right.
Like, pump the brakes. And
she's kind of the iron fist and he's sort of the brains. You know what I mean? They have different approaches. But I love how he goes to flesh out this plan that he may or may not have totally figured out. But he's kind of... going through his treasure room, and Nawal comes in and he just goes, how dare they doubt me? I'll show them how shrewd and meticulous I am. He was a little off-put by her comments. She gets under his skin. But he ends up landing with the plan to bribe Juntaek into borrowing his identity in order to enter OnSeong Hospital, because he is the son of a government official that has, you know, some rapport with the Japanese government.
You have to have your permit if you are not.
Right, because they're Korean citizens. Yep. So Juntaek asks him again at this point to join the resistance. And TaeSang answers with, how do I dare to take back what the king couldn't even protect?
Oof.
And I thought that was kind of a...
I mean... Yeah, there's kind of that whole idea.
He has a point, though.
Like, why is this my problem?
Well, and honestly, what is one guy supposed to do against an army?
Well, I'm just a business guy. Like, I'm just a businessman. I'm not I don't have power.
Right.
Of any kind.
He's got influence, but it's whether or not it truly is the right kind of influence that we have yet to kind of uncover.
Right.
So, Juntaek does agree to let him borrow his ID. The sleuths have arrived in this modern Western-style attire.
Well, and they're standing. TaeSang and Mr. Gu are just
waiting in the street.
Car, like, okay. And we see a very different side of our sleuths.
Yes. Very classy.
Very classy. I want her dress.
Yeah, she's in this beautiful, like, veiled bonnet and some sort of two-piece skirt suit or...
Yeah, and it's a very pretty blue, and her hair's done in, like, the modern style.
Well, it looked... The dress reminded me of something like that like, the Queen of England would wear. I mean, it was very refined, very beautiful.
And you just see TaeSang's face, and he's, like, he was already gone, like, being interested in, like, who are you as a person?
Yeah.
And now that he sees her all dolled up, he's like...
Your feminine wiles have...
Right. He opens the door and he, like, he offers his hand to help her get in. He's like, this is, like, just, like, what a gentleman would do. And she's like, yeah, I don't need that, though. I'm good.
I've still got a weapon attached to my ankle, so back up, bro.
You did not.
So, TaeSang, ChaeOk, JyeongGwan, and Mr. Gu are riding in the car. They're getting ready to sneak into the hospital. And Commissioner Ishikawa is actually informed of this development in the investigation because of Mori. Meanwhile, Mr. Gu is busy faking a severe case of the runs in order to create a distraction for ChaeOk to enter the records room inside of the hospital.
And it's quite hilarious because they all get in and they have like a slight hiccup to get in even. Because he gives them the guards to get in, like, here's the ID, and they're like, well, why do you have these people? And Mr. Gu's very smooth, and he's like, oh yeah, I mean, this is my master, this is his fiance, this is her dad, like, they're family, like, they're supposed to be
right
part of this. And they're all just, like, not breathing.
Yeah, keep your eyes down, don't make eye contact.
Don't look. So then when they do get in, it's almost like ChaeOk is, like, unsure that he can even handle
this
distraction. And I'm like, girl, he just got you into this hospital. Like, that's kind of a big deal.
Right. It's kind of like that whole if you believe your lie, then you can get anyone to believe your lie.
Depends on the lie.
I don't know. Those were some pretty out there lies, and he was able to convince a room. So ChaeOk is discovered by a janitor that walks in on her. It seems kind of like the jig might be up, but YoungGwan actually comes in at the last minute, holds him at gunpoint, holds the janitor at gunpoint. And at this point, we discovered that this man is actually a part of the People's Resistance because of a particular hand signal that he shows, which is a palm to his chest with his ring finger tucked underneath. And then we see Mr. Gu is rescued from what looks like this horse-sized inoculation at the last moment.
Ooh, that was a brutal-looking needle.
And TaeSang says to the doctor after, Mr. Gu sees those guys exit the room, the record room, and he just goes, oh, I'm healed! And
you did it!
And TaeSang looks at the doctor and goes, thank you, sir. You truly are a skilled doctor. I was like, everybody just looked so confused. But again, if you believe your lie, everyone else will too.
Well, and they had originally were trying to see a specific doctor that Jin-tuk's family actually sees.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has his identity. And the nurse is like, nah, that doctor's not here today. And
which they knew.
Right.
That was part of the plan.
Right, the whole plan. And he was like, well, can you check again? So this nurse is, trying to figure out, but then when Mr. Gu goes down, everybody's like, bro.
Yeah, you good there?
How many needles do we need?
He's like, it's coming out my bum. Like, are you having a baby? Or, because I know that feeling. The group decides to exit the building, and as they're going down the stairs, there is just this resounding clash that echoes through the hallways, and everyone kind of takes pause, and they're like, that was unusual. Right. And we find that this sound is actually from the creature that is now brutally attacking the Japanese guards in the basement. And the sound was actually a gunshot in an attempt to subdue the creature.
And it's from underground.
Yes.
Which is a semi-terrifying thought.
Yes.
Like, what's below here? Why are we hearing sounds like this from underneath?
And the hospital staff are trying to say, the military do exercises all the time, sometimes noises from outside. And you can see the team's just like, that was inside here. What was that?
We know the difference.
Yeah, exactly. But Kato prevents the other guards from saving
one of their own.
From saving one of their own, yeah. And he's just watching in awe as this creature uses its tentacles to stab through people's abdomens.
He is almost
in love.
Yeah.
There's an infatuation aspect to his gaze. It's very weird.
Unsettling.
It's yuck. It's yucky. But this arm attaches itself to the victim's head and then basically zombifies it and consumes the brain, it seems like. But rather than be disgusted or repulsed, Kato is just she's a goddess. A goddess has been born.
Yes.
You're like, all right, sir, you need some counseling.
What was your childhood like?
Did your mother not love you enough?
Were you hugged? Ever?
Exactly.
Well, so then after Kato's being Kato, the group ends up in a room, in another supply closet, and the father-daughter duo has decided, you know what, we're staying the night here. This is how we're going to find out information.
Right.
And they have clothes that they brought to change into, out of their modern wear, and they're like, we're staying here because there is a military ward behind the hospital, and we know that that's where things are going down. We need to get in there so we can actually, find out. And the janitor from earlier, ends up informing them, you know what? When people go down into the basement, they never come back.
Right.
And the reason I know this is because my brother is one of them. That's why I got a job here. I'm trying to find him. I've had no luck. And, he asks ChaeOk and her dad, you know what? If you see a man that has these specific characteristics, just be on the lookout. Because I would really like my brother back. Because I can't find him. I can't hear from him.
That was later.
Was that later? No, he talks about it in this one, too. Doesn't he? No? Well, sorry.
That's when they meet up with the Japanese guard, when he mentions the specific person.
Oh, that is... Man, this is what I get for watching it today.
But TaeSang...
Well, he's not on board. TaeSang is very anti them staying.
Mm-hmm.
He is not about that life at all.
And they tell him, you need to leave because you're just going to be a liability. You need to get out. We know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to go find Sachimoto. So go do that.
Right. Please leave. Because you're a hindrance at this point. Because we don't have much time to get in while all this chaos is going around.
Right. But we see that 50% of his concern is just that he's very enamored with ChaeOk. And I think she knows it too.
Well, she uses it against him, even. Because they go out the door and he grabs her wrist. And she just kind of like looks down and looks up. She's like, you need to let me go.
Yeah.
And he's like, but you can't just like be running it. Like, you need to have a plan. She's like, we have a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
You said that we have to find this woman by the time the cherry blossoms fall. We don't have time for this.
Yeah.
This is what you hired me to do.
This is our one chance. So go put on your big boy pants.
Mm-hmm. And so they take off, and then TaeSang's just like, wait, no, like, don't leave. They've disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And so TaeSang and Mr. Gu are just kind of in this hallway that patients aren't really allowed to be in.
Right.
Anyway. And this other doctor's like, why are you here? Starts accusing him of like trying to get in, basically. And this nurse that TaeSang had originally talked to comes down. She's like, oh my goodness, I found you. Yep, that doctor was out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to exit this way, like, for your safety.
And mid-sentence, this siren starts to go off in the hospital, and they all kind of pause, and they're like, what does that mean?
I don't think I like this anymore.
Right. And then she just looks at them very, very seriously and says, you need to evacuate right now. And so they do. And we realize that this military siren is just, it's the whole hospital is being emptied, essentially, of all non-essential personnel. And then we pan away from this scene and see that the creature is busy trying to break out of his cage, and it's starting to look successful with this. And Kato then says that they're going to move this creature to level 4 containment, and that the nitrogen should be prepared. And he's speaking to it like it's this deity at this point, like, don't worry, we'll take care of you.
Very, very caring and very
I don't know if it's like
loving.
A father or like a worshiper, but it's
weird. He stands the creature.
Yeah. It's his bias.
Oh.
Yikes. So we see the creature is being doused with nitrogen gas, and it falls into a slumber, and the guards are actually donned in like full gas masks and protective gear as this creature is being transferred into a cage that's on wheels that they can move it throughout the facility. And we learn that the creature it emits these anthrax spores as it sleeps as a way to protect itself, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, a little well, not more, a lot more than a little, but it's very terrifying.
Yeah. I thought it was good writing.
Oh yeah, that's genius.
Because for it to be subdued with nitrogen, you're like, well, why wouldn't you just the whole hospital be like that? Well, then, if it's emitting anthrax the whole time, that's kind of problematic.
Right. Otherwise, everyone's going to be deceased real quick.
Right. Exactly. So I thought that was an interesting plot point, I thought. So the cage is seen being taken through the prisoners' quarters. Mm-hmm. And the spores start to fall on these people, and at first they're like,
looks like snow.
This is so beautiful. What is this? And someone reaches out to touch it, and
several people do. They're just kind of like shooing it away, or hey, let's catch it. Mm-hmm. I mean, what else do they have to do other than be tortured?
Exactly. And soon there's just screams echoing through the prison as there's these deep, deep sores being burned into their bodies, which ends up killing most, if not all, of the prisoners that were in this hall, aside from Akiko. Mm-hmm. And as Kato is watching this creature go down the hallway, he just says, marvelous.
Yeah, he's very...
He gives me the heebie-jeebies.
He's creepy. He's a very scary man.
So back to the janitor.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about this?
So the janitor and ChaeOk and YoungGwan have made it to a rooftop of one of these buildings. We don't know if it's the actual hospital itself, one of the little outlying buildings.
Kind of using it as a vantage point.
Right, just kind of see what's the layout that we're up against here. They have their binoculars. They're like, okay, what's a good path? And so he's filling them in of like, okay, I've been to this building. I've been to this building. I haven't been to that one. That one's super hard to get into.
This is the one I can access on which days.
Right, and then he was like, there's this watchtower here, but somebody fell off and died. And they were talking about, replacing it, but they never have. And ChaeOk's like, looks at her dad and is like, all right, well.
Parkour.
That, honestly, it kind of hurt me a little bit because I was like.
That first drop off the roof, I'm like, girl, shoulders gone.
Oh, absolutely. Arms ripped off.
Yeah.
But she makes down a side of a building, totally casual. It's fine. And she begins to make her way across like the camp or like the grounds, and with her dad being up in the or on the rooftop, keeping in contact, and has these really cool hand signals to be like, okay, like it's safe, go this way or go this way, and he helps guide her and make sure that she doesn't get caught by any of the soldiers that are
moving in,
coming with the trucks or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was really cool is that she ended up jumping off a building into the back of a truck, but then used that at the same time. Like, it was like, jump off the building, jump off the truck, and like roll and land. Because then you're not being transported anywhere.
Right.
But you made it so you didn't just jump from a building.
Right.
To the ground. And she ends up, making it to this watchtower. And kind of in the nick of time, too, because then doesn't another siren go off? I think that's what I have in here.
I don't remember.
Like, another siren goes off, and that's the Anthrax attacks that are going on. And that's getting more soldiers, and it's just this horrific scene that unfolds because all of these bodies are being piled into trucks as all of these people are dying. And
it's not Japanese soldiers. She sees that it's these Korean prisoners that have been concealed in the hospital.
And yeah, like, where did all these people come from other than all these...
And we're talking, like, truckloads of people being
that are just dead.
Loaded up and taken probably to incinerators or,
mass graves or...
Right.
And it's...
No dignity.
It's really quite horrifying.
Right.
And she's just kind of sitting there and just has, like, this... shock, terror, horror, like all
Disgust.
of it. Just like disbelief. And as all of this is going on, we cut to House of Golden Treasure, and TaeSang he's restless. He's not.
It's like a caged tiger.
He's sitting at a table and he's like drumming his fingers, and then he gets up and he's pacing, and he goes and looks at a painting and then touches it and then goes somewhere else, and he is like.
Well, he's trying to reconcile, like, why his thoughts are so full of ChaeOk when he stands to lose everything. But, like, he can't help but think about her, which is so out of character for him.
Well, and it's hilarious because he doesn't realize it until Miss Naval comes in, and he's like, I don't get it. Why am I so worried?
She goes, the first woman to ignore you, and now you're in love.
He's like, no, I'm not. I'm not in love. It's humanism.
It's humanism.
It's love for all humankind.
Specifically, that human over there.
I like that one the most.
I choose you.
But at the same time, there's a sense of guilt of, like, I left these people behind. Which, I mean, I don't think he fully understands, like, this is what they do for a living. You didn't leave them behind. They chose to take on this job. And to just go into this.
Truly, he would have been a liability because he doesn't.
This isn't his world.
No, he doesn't have the trust in their dynamic that they have with each other.
Right.
To just go in, know what the other person's thinking, and then be able to slip in, slip out, and
Right. Do the hand signals from a rooftop.
Fall off of a rooftop and not die.
Twice. Painful. But yeah, Miss Novel, like, kind of scolds him a little bit and was like, instead of just sitting here and worrying and being consumed with your guilt or whatever, how about you be useful and you
Yeah.
go find out information and find Sachimoto. Like,
Hold up your end of the deal.
They, in order to find Myeonja, like, you need to find Sachimoto. So,
Right.
like, let's get on this. And I love that his first thought is like, you know what? I'm going to go to Mori.
I loved this scene. He just he just jogs outside to the window where Mori is trying to like ignore him. He rolls up the window really quick and he's like, I'm not here. You can't see me. And then, like you said, he just taps, drums on the window. And then he says, I need you to enlist Ishikawa's resources, basically, to locate this man named Sachimoto. He's about this old. He does this, and we need to find out who he is. And Mori starts to, like, write this down. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And then Taesong's basically just like, thanks. And then he kind of, bounds inside the door, and he pulls it shut, and the other one kind of swings open a little bit, and he steps over to the side and gives him a little wave and then pulls the other door shut, which I'm wondering if that was not on purpose.
Right.
And then Mori is just sitting there like, what just happened? How
did I get myself into this?
I don't know why he's so convincing, but I would apparently go to war for this guy.
What is happening?
It was so funny. So we're now at Moonlight Bar. And we see Sachimoto is drawing a woman from Chosun, which is observed by the owner of the bar, which is Na Young-chun, who is played by Ok Jae-yeon. And they have a little bit of an exchange there, and, she finds out that he's, I don't remember.
Well, she tells him, she's like, I can tell that she's from Chosun, and he goes, how?
And she goes by the way that her hair is parted.
Right, and apparently it's very distinct, and especially probably for, like, her class, like her status, what it would be. And, she's kind of just trying to, like, maybe feel him out, see if maybe this is actually the person, because she's heard this name before. And so...
From the Sleuths.
So she's like... Maybe this is that person, that I'd heard about. And at the same time, out in the streets, the news is spreading like wildfire that OnSeong Hospital is closed indefinitely from an incurable disease. And they won't say what disease,
but that they've seen truckloads of corpses being loaded from the hospital and taken off the grounds.
Oh yeah, there's all these people like, oh yeah, I know this person that said that they talked to this person who said that they saw it. Like,
well, and now the military has a barricade set up outside the hospital with like machine guns and
trucks and
sandbags. It's the whole shebang. No one in or out, including our sleuthing duo. So that's a bit of an issue.
That's a problem.
So back at the House of Golden Treasure, we have the nurse that had actually come to Taesong's aid the day before show up and hands him a note on some linen, and it says that Myeongja has been found. And so Taesong kind of presses her for more information. He says,
like,
what's going on in there? She says, I don't know. He says, are people being let in and out? She says, no, it's completely shut down. I made it out just in time. And then he says, who are you to be giving me this information? Why would they tell you? Why would they trust you? And then she shows him the hand signal of the people's resistance. And so she just has this horrified look on her face because she's speaking of the death that has taken place in there, and that she's
much of it.
Never seen anything like it. She has no idea what's going on, but she's scared. And she also reveals that anyone that has tried to discover what was happening in the hospital from the People's Resistance never came back alive. So there's something that has been ongoing, and they know it's been ongoing, but they've hit a hard wall with it because everyone dies.
Yeah. Or
that's encouraging.
It's horrifying.
Yes.
And at this point, everyone in the House of Golden Treasure is in the lobby area, and they're all listening to this, and they all just kind of have like this look of like,
we're screwed.
well, we're all gonna die now.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can't find Myeonja, like, we lose everything. And potentially our lives as part of this.
Yep.
And TaeSang just turns to Mr. Gu and he goes, get my things ready.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, don't do this. And he's like, yeah, well, I have to. And he just walks out the door. And that ends the second episode. And it is the best song. I think it's called Forever or something like that. That song is so good.
Yep.
But that's the end of episode 2, which is a terrifying way to end an episode.
Well, we also, just before they hit the end credits, ChaeOk is like in this dark hallway investigating something, and she just hears this growl from behind her, and you're like, oh, well, bye, girl.
I don't want to play.
So that was episode 2 called Mother.
Yes.
Episode 3, Signal. So we open up right away with 7 Japanese dead, and essentially most, if not all, of the test subjects are all died. This is Director Ichiro getting, an update from the soldiers as to what has happened inside of the hospital. And all of these bodies from these containment cells that had those Korean prisoners they're just being ruthlessly piled up into the halls. Kato is questioning one of his men who is essentially hanging on for his life by a thread.
Yeah.
He's bandaged up from head to toe. Parts of his face look like they're missing or damaged.
Severely, and he's hard to understand almost because of that damage.
But Kato is just really enthusiastically asking for details. What was it like? What did it look like when it attacked you? And we flash back to the creature being in the cage, being moved through the halls of the facility when the nitrogen is accidentally turned off entering an elevator.
Yeah, it gets stuck.
So they shove it, but one of the levers on the nitrogen is actually pushed closed. So the gas stops being pumped into the tank, or into the cage. Mm-hmm. And this creature is actually being moved into a lower level holding area that can actually be viewed from above through this metal grate that like Kato and his men are standing around watching for.
Right, almost like a safety procedure.
Right, it's like a viewing platform. Sort of. Yeah. So while they're in the elevator, the guards start to notice that there's actually no more spores being produced. And then like in that moment when one of them runs to turn on the nitrogen again, it's like whoop, and dead.
And it's not even like they barely had time to process that there were no more spores.
Yep.
And
it was going for the throat.
Let's attack.
One by one, it just starts to murk them all, aside from that one single major that escaped. So,
well, they make it to a floor, and one man actually makes it out of like the little elevator, mm-hmm. and there's still men inside this little elevator, and one of them, I think he's like a lieutenant or a captain,
just an underling of some kind,
but he is talking to one of like somebody even like a private or something. He's like, you need to shut that door because the creature has made it out into the hall. Mm-hmm. He's like, you need to shut that door, and he's like, I don't want to shut that door.
Yeah,
like I don't. And so he's like, pulls out his gun. He's like, if you don't shut this door, I will shoot you.
Honestly, that's preferable at this stage.
Yeah,
I would rather be shot in the face than have my brain sucked out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nice and dark and morbid here, people. But he goes to shut the door, and it gets stuck, and it starts making this really loud squeaking sound. Mm-hmm. And
it's such a tense moment. You're like, he's dying, obviously.
Right, and he doesn't quite get it over, and the creature grabs him, and he manages to hang on to both sides of like the door frame. Mm-hmm. And the man inside who had been pointing the gun, he's like, let go. And he's like, no, you gotta save me. And he's like begging for his life. And this man is ruthlessly beating him.
Yep. Like over the head with his gun to get him to let go. Yeah.
He's like, nah, dude.
Bye.
I'm sacrificing you.
Yeah. I mean, he was anyway by telling him to shut the door.
But I believe this is the man that has barely survived.
It is, yes.
And he's, telling Kato this is what happened, and he begins to beg Kato. He's like, you need to destroy that. That is a monster. Like, that is a failure. Like, please, we have to get rid of this because this is...
He's gonna kill everyone.
Right. And then we just cut to this scene, and it's very gruesome, and it's just puddles, basically, of blood. And I have a little note in here. It was like the cinematography of that scene was just insane because you don't have to see. There's nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this pan over just an empty floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the creatures like scream, growls, and just like everything shakes.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yep, nope. I don't want to be in this situation.
Well,
That's
in
terrifying.
that same like scene, we do realize though that this creature grows in size with every person that it consumes.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but it's able to heal itself from wounds and bullets by growing. Because we see like a bullet actually like be pushed out of her body.
Forced out.
Yeah. So that's exciting and helpful.
A little bit terrifying.
We've got a little Wolverine healing going on over here.
Nope.
Yikes. So TaeSang has gone to meet with Lady Maeda over a cup of tea in those pekcha teacups.
Mm-hmm.
They're sharing pleasantries, and he very casually tries to bring up the topic of OnSeong Hospital. And, he says, I have a friend that I would really like to visit. I was just hoping to know when I'd be able to see her again. And she asks, is Myungja this friend that you're hoping to see? And then she goes on to warn him, it's better to just forget.
And then casually sips her tea.
Yes. It was very
chilling.
Well,
almost.
it was a very they were playing chess with this conversation where both of them know that the other knows, but they don't know how much the other knows.
Right.
So neither of them are trying to give away what their true intentions are here, even though anyway. But TaeSang says desperation can drive men to do things they might otherwise avoid. And he goes, I'm that desperate man right now.
I'm hoping for a miracle.
Yes. And she advises him as a, quote, friend that he should really just find another way to avoid Ishikawa's wrath because this is not going to land him where he wants to be.
Well, she calls them empty threats.
I noticed that too.
She's
yeah.
like, just brush off the empty threats of my husband.
Mm-hmm.
There are better ways that you can be served. I'm sorry, what now? This man already has been tortured by her husband. These are not empty threats. Some of them have already been, carried out.
Right.
These are not empty.
No.
At all.
And I think that goes to show the way that she views him almost as a joke.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she feels, I think, that he is riding the coattails of her pedigree and who she is. And she just has... she's already frustrated with him for having a lover. But...
A pregnant lover as
well.
A
pregnant lover. A Korean pregnant lover. And then... I think she just feels that everything he has is because of her. It's because it's been given by her. And so I don't know if she was insinuating that she could protect TaeSang from him.
Right.
Or, I don't know. But
it's a little bit.
The dynamic between those two is very interesting. For her to give him the time of day like this.
Oh, yeah.
When she is a woman of wealth and royalty and...
Right. You can tell that she finds him fascinating enough because he is the one who she asked, I want this.
She approached him.
This tea set. I want this. And yeah, she went to him first. It wasn't, he was like, hey, what can I do for you?
Right. Trying to weasel his way in.
So you can tell that she finds him intriguing enough.
Right.
To be like,
she's his Myungja. A little less prego, but...
A lot.
But TaeSang goes and asks Mr. Gu for the blueprints to the hospital. Mr. Gu is super skeptical of this whole situation, and he's like, this disease, it's going to take us. It's probably real. And ChaeOk is just using you to get out. She doesn't actually have any information on Myungja. She's scared, and you're walking right into a trap. And he's like, I would bet everything I own on it. And then TaeSang says, you've always been a terrible gambler. You lose every single time. Are you really willing to bet? And he says, yeah. And he goes, well, I just had Lady Maeda herself confirm that Myungja is there. He goes, oh. Whoops.
Try again.
But
well, then we get a
the
flashback.
nurse, right? We go back to the
before.
nurse saying, the sleuths are awaiting a signal, and it needs to come by 10 o'clock, and it needs to be visible from the east wing of the hospital.
And it needs to be something like smoke, something that
can be seen from a distance.
It doesn't have to be like super dramatic or whatever, but a signal needs to happen.
Right, something covert, as they would be typical of them to,
right.
be sneaky about
Especially it. Especially, if this is the people's resistance, like you have to be very covert.
Yeah.
And we cut to Ishikawa getting a little bit of a rundown. And he's like, what has TaeSang been up to? And they're like, he's kind of had an unusual routine today. Like, first he went and played mahjong. And then...
with Mr. Wong.
with Mr.
Chinese
Wong.
immigrant, yeah.
And then he rode around in a rickshaw for like half an hour. And then he went to a tailor. Every location, though, he's making plans.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he's playing mahjong with Mr. Wong, he's, has a stack of money, and underneath the money, there's this little note, and it says fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what happened with the rickshaw. That is unknown at this point.
Probably just to throw him off his trail a little bit.
I mean, I would. Why not? But then at the tailor, the tailor's being like, hey, I think you would like this material better than this material. And as he goes to lift it up, there's another little note.
Mm-hmm.
Or not even a note, I'm sorry, it's a picture.
It's the drawing from the bar.
And, I mean, what a great way. I mean, like, yeah, they already think that he's flighty, so why not just keep playing to that?
Well,
and you have connections, and you're the king of information.
He's toying with them, too. Like, he's just having a little bit of good old-fashioned fun because he knows he's 10 steps ahead of them all, and he enjoys the fact that he just confused the snot out of all of them
Especially since the night before he went and pounded on Maury's window and was like,
hey,
you're gonna do this for me now.
Right. I don't know that he takes threats very well.
I think this might be a coping mechanism.
Just a tiny bit. Yes, I would agree. So the janitor, we're back at the hospital. He enters the hospital's east wing with his cart containing YoungGwan. And they enter the janitor's closet where we see ChaeOk has a Japanese soldier with her. Choi YoungGwan, which is played by Kim Yoon-woo. And Jungwon's ready to battle this guy. Out. Yeah, and ChaeOk steps in between them, steps in front of her father's gun and says, no, you need to hear his story. And we learned that he was taken from his Korean home in order to serve in the military. And actually at this moment we see a scene, we don't really know if it's present day or if it was in the past a little bit, but Ms. Nawal is actually helping this woman with her sewing machine, and the woman says that this sewing machine had helped send this woman's son to medical school.
Right.
But instead of money, she asks for help locating her son, who had gone missing after he was enlisted in the Japanese military and then become injured. She lost contact with him. And of course we learn that this boy is actually the soldier in ChaeOk's care right now. And YoungGwan, this soldier, he reveals that the people were killed by an anthrax contamination last night. And he had actually seen the same thing happened at Bonglim, where an entire village was wiped out with an anthrax attack, and it was horrifying to him. He remembers the screaming, he remembers the fear that these people experienced, and it's clearly impacted him deeply on a psychological level.
Well, and part of why we can trust what this young soldier is talking about is ChaeOk actually rescued him. maybe a couple hours or however long before, because he, when all of the anthrax spores were just disappearing from the halls, and it was the bodies being thrown out of the cells, this is how they know Myeonja is alive. It's because he actually saw her and told her, don't move until this whole area gets sanitized and like clean, because like that's for your safety.
Right.
And he manages to get outside after this whole cleanup and is just like vomiting because it's horrifying.
Did we want to talk about the janitor's brother first? Okay. So after the janitor then asked this soldier if he had seen his brother, who was a man in his early 20s of average height with this little black birthmark over his ear. And the soldier says that he didn't see the brother, but he did interact with
Myeonja.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that he saw her in one of the cells, and she managed to survive the anthrax spores that were taking everyone else out. Tells her to stay put until things are clean, for her own safety. And he manages to make it out of the basement. That's what I'm assuming that's what it is a basement at this point. And he's just throwing up and vomiting everywhere because this is horrifying. And
he's just a kid.
Yeah,
he didn't want to be there. These are his people being
he was
murdered.
Forced into this to begin with. And he was barely done throwing up, and a Japanese soldier ends up grabbing him, and he's like telling him he's disgusting and how horrible he is, and starts beating the crap out of him. And this poor kid vomits on the soldier. And he is being forced, like he's trying to force him to eat his own vomit. And he's just being horrible. And so he has decided that he's going to just end his life because he can't take this. This is horrible.
How could you?
Oh yeah, you're watching your countrymen die. You're having to deal with.
You're not, and you're implicit
constantly.
you're implicit in their murders. Like you are part of the people who,
right,
are killing.
Because you were forced to.
Yeah.
And so he goes to hang himself, and he's like crying. He's like, "I'm so sorry. I hope you forgive me." And kicks the stool away, and this knife just comes flying through the air, cuts the rope. He falls down, and it was ChaeOk, and she goes, don't be stupid. If you're going to give up your life, you need to make sure it counts. Don't waste it. And
yeah, there's been enough wasted life tonight. Don't let yours be one of them.
You don't deserve that. And so that is how he is in this room, and so that is how she is telling him, like, her dad especially, like, we can trust this kid because he is just a kid. And I watched him, and at this point he's alive.
He would love to owe his allegiance to anyone besides the Japanese because he just wants to get the heck out of there.
He just wants to go home.
So TaeSang, he goes to Na Youngchun at the Moonlight Bar and asks about this drawing that had been given to him by the tailor, and finds out that Sachimoto had been there. And then Youngchun offers to set up a dinner with Sachimoto for TaeSang. We then see Sachimoto is approached by director Ichiro in his quarters, and we kind of see some of these horrors that he has been commissioned to record in his books. And director Ichiro actually confronts Kato about the experiments being performed in the basement, which we figure out he knew nothing about.
Right.
This was all being done behind his back, within his own hospital.
Right. And
which I'm like, how do you stay that naive to all of that when you hear...
Well, because he has his own experiments going on.
True.
So Ichiro has his own
half of the prison that he's...
Craziness that he's...
Yeah, I guess the screamings probably don't seem that unusual when that's all he
does.
But Director Ichiro, he knows that this creature could be used to turn the tide of the war, and he kind of hopes to gain favor with the emperor. And they have to first determine how to control the creature before it can be weaponized. But we see that the creature had actually been appearing to listen to the conversation and starts to plot her escape.
Yes. And that was kind of a creepy scene anyway, because it's almost like
There's sentience. It's not mindless killing. Like, she's still in there.
she knows what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not there's control,
Right.
that's to be seen. But like, you just see the side like where her ear is supposed to be,
And there's like 3 of them.
and and it's like contracting almost like clockwork, or like gears of just like amplifying the sound, and it's mildly terrifying because you don't know how far away you can be for her to not hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they're very, very loudly talking about her.
Yeah, because they don't think that she's still in there
at all.
Yeah. I mean, why would you?
Mm-hmm.
She's a killing machine. It's scarier to think that someone would be sentient and knowingly killing people.
Right. So our soldier has provided a map and blueprints to ChaeOk and JongWon of, okay, this is what it looks like. And as they're studying it, ChaeOk is like, I know this layout.
Mm-hmm.
I know what this is. She's like, this is what it looked like in Manchuria. And she's like, we cannot be having the same thing that happened there happening here.
Right.
Like, there's almost like she already knows what she's up against.
They clearly saw something awful.
Episode 1. That's where we started.
Yep.
So maybe they were there.
They must have been.
They had to be to have this type of concern.
Right.
And so then
they send the soldier back to his barracks.
And
he's so
begging to stay with them.
He is so afraid and so almost hurt that he feels like he's getting left behind, and she's like, I will come back for you, but we can't let anybody know anything is happening because that will undo everything we've gained so far. Right. And he just looks at her and says, please don't forget me. It was really heartbreaking.
So sad.
Yeah. But he's like, there's something, he has hope now. And right. That's a big
something
deal.
To hold on to.
And that's kind of the theme of this whole show, is that through the oppression of the people, they still have hope to hold on to, and that's kind of a glimmer of that in this kid. But we see TaeSang sitting in the back of Mori's car.
Poor Mori.
And he's like, what are we doing here? And TaeSang says, I'm actually waiting for a woman. And Mori like perks up like, oh, you're sort of normal. Add some excitement to the night.
You actually talk to them?
Right, exactly. And he just seems kind of relieved that he's doing something that a normal dude would do.
Not trying to jip him out of, or like con him and
scam
him in
exactly.
any way.
And then Taesung shoves some money in his hand and tells him to go get himself something to eat. And because he had seen Youngchun arrive at the restaurant and start to go inside, so he was gonna follow her into the dinner with Sachimoto.
And what's funny is Mori actually like looks through all the money again to make sure
there's no words. Idiot. Yeah, exactly. Am I getting tricked again?
And then when he doesn't see it, it's almost like he's like, oh wait, no, he's actually
meeting a woman. Okay.
Wow, okay.
So as TaeSang is heading in, the Japanese gangsters from the House of Golden Treasure have shown up with the chamber pot and their big knives, well, their swords, have shown up, and they've stopped TaeSang from entering the restaurant and proceed to rough him up a little bit in an alleyway.
Well, they tell him, we have unfinished business.
Right.
And he's like, I'm really sorry, like, I really have somewhere to be right now. How about we meet up? We can talk about it.
I'll give you your money.
You tell me what you think it's worth.
Yeah.
It's fine. And in the alleyway, he's like, okay, like, what's your fair price? And this gangster's just like, you're going to give me the House of Golden Treasure.
Yeah. But as they're dragging him to the alley, though, we see Mori. He's, like, wrestling with his conscience, whether or not he should go to Taesong's aid. But then this superior is like, we're just here to observe. We're not here to intervene. Like, that's not our job. And then proceed to eat the food that he brought. And you're like, okay. brutal.
Rude.
But precious time is kind of slipping away as TaeSang is fighting with these Japanese antagonists. And his meeting with Sachimoto comes and goes. ChaeOk is busy waiting for his signal, and she's just like, we have to keep moving.
To happen. Right.
But TaeSang, he's trying to fight back, but they have swords. He has nothing in his hands.
Well, they call him TaeSang.
TaeSang?
And he's like, Jang TaeSang! My name is Jang TaeSang! Now say it properly! He gets so upset. I don't blame him. Like, say my name. I'm not going to respond if you're calling me something that I'm not.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're gonna murder me, at least treat me with dignity before you...
Yeah, at least know how to say my name.
Yeah.
Rude.
But he's starting to kind of lose the battle because, it's like 5-1 and they have swords. TaeSang is on the ground being kicked, and he sees this Japanese officer start to go past the alley, and he starts to plead with them to stop the violence. And the Japanese men are like, we're just treating this Josenjing, we're giving him a well-deserved lesson. And the officer kind of looks at TaeSang on the ground and just says, don't
get too carried away.
Try to keep it down while you're killing this guy.
Totally fine.
And there, in this moment, TaeSang, he stands up and realizes no one is coming to help him. And he just straight grabs this guy's sword with his bare palm. And suddenly his passivity with, like, the Japanese occupation, this whole situation, it just, like, this switch flips and it suddenly becomes anger. And he starts to realize that he is no longer unaffected by the fact that he's been keeping his head down and trying to stay friends with everybody.
Right.
And this no longer suffices, and he's gonna do something about it.
He's done.
Yeah. He's mad. He is pissed.
He is pissed.
So he basically kicks the crap out of those guys at that point and hobbles out of the alleyway.
And Mori's relieved.
Oh, he's so relieved to see him alive.
He almost has, like, this smile on his face, and he's just like, oh,
good, you're okay. Well, TaeSang gives him this look where he's slightly disappointed, but not really surprised that Mori didn't do anything to help him. Which was a really sad moment for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
There was that glimpse of humanity almost, of, like,
vulnerability, I think, from him. But again, he knew that he wasn't going to, but he had hopes that he might have.
Right.
And I honestly think he would have if it hadn't been for the other guy that showed up.
If he hadn't been influenced by someone who was higher up on the totem pole than he was. Right.
So TaeSang, he hobbles into the restaurant. Sachimoto is long gone, and it just kind of seems like this whole plan is crumbling around him, and he's in a rough shape. ChaeOk and YoungGwan, they are starting to get impatient waiting for TaeSang's signal. And they finally agree that ChaeOk can enter the facility just to do some reconnaissance. And she starts to climb through these upper vents and sees that there are more prisoners being ushered into the hospital.
And yeah, they climb into the rooftop to do this, and so that way somebody can keep an eye out. And while this is happening, Mr. Gu comes back at House of Golden Treasure, and he has the blueprints finally.
Yes.
And so Mr. Gu has walked in with blueprints, and then within like 30 seconds, Juntak has bursted in. He's like, I need to talk to TaeSang. And then
he's like demanding.
Like, where is he? And they're like, he's not here. And at the same time, TaeSang walks in, and he's, as we know, he is rough.
Looking a little worse for wear.
And they all like try to talk to him, and he's like, no.
Well, he doesn't say anything. He just wordlessly, like, hobbles up the stairs, like, doubled over in pain.
You can tell that, like, just the look on his face, they're like, we don't even know what to say to you right now, because what happened?
That was clearly bad.
Well, yeah.
That probably doesn't happen to him.
Probably
right?
not since childhood.
No. Not as the owner of House of Golden Treasure. So this is probably
Shock.
a bit of shock seeing their fearless leader actually not be bulletproof for once.
Right.
Bulletproof Boy Scout.
Hey. Always. But he starts to tend to his injuries, and he has like this huge gash, like under his ribs. I mean, he'd already grabbed the sword with his hand, like he's covered in bruises. And Miss Novel walks in, and she's just like, I didn't realize that we had sword fights here anymore, and is trying to help him get bandaged up. And she's like, okay.
I mean, he's literally putting a Band-Aid on a stab wound.
Yeah, it's like a little, it's like gauze,
like
and then it's like the
bleed stop stuff,
powder, and then
which would not feel good. Ugh, and that's such a tender part of your body.
Oh my goodness, it hurt watching.
Yes, it did.
And so yeah, but Miss Novel's just like, we need to get you to a hospital. Like, you need a doctor. Like, these are not
flesh wounds. You are injured.
You were stabbed.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Goo's like, go to the police. You need to report this. And of course he knows.
Right.
That's gonna do
just watched
nothing.
He watched it happen.
Yeah.
And he ends up telling him, like, because she's like, Myeonja's not worth your life. And he goes, that's not why I'm doing this. They're trying to take everything from me. They're trying to sell everything off. They're trying to, force me to go into the army. They're trying to take my life. And this cut isn't what hurts me. It's my pride.
Yeah.
And I'm not a coward, and I'm not running away. And while all of this is happening, Yeonjun walks in, and she's like,
sorry.
She walks in, and she's like, I have somebody that really needs to talk to you. And right behind her, Sachimoto walks in. And then you're just like, okay, then it cuts away, and that I kind of didn't like that, because I was like, I want to know what you want to say. Like, tell me what you're going to say.
This is important. It cuts away to Sachimoto. He's riding in a rickshaw back to the hospital. And then in this moment, there's kind of things happening simultaneously.
Right, there's a lot going on.
Mr. Gu goes and seeks out Mr. Wong's help with
something.
Presumably whatever they discussed, earlier in the day or the week. ChaeOk is seen exiting or trying to exit the ventilation system. She climbs down into this lab full of specimens. And this is one of the most harrowing scenes of the entire series.
It is. I have it written as a room of horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors, yeah. I almost turned it off at this point because it features jars of human body parts, including these lobotomized heads. And the part that really got me was, like, the unborn children. It was
nauseating.
I had a physical reaction to that. That was awful. I was prepared for it the second time. It's
horrifying.
I don't like talking about it. But
so there's a lot of atrocious things in this room.
Yes. And after the violent autopsy that we witnessed with director Ichiro, we're just left to imagine the horrors that had taken place here, and how these specimens were obtained. So ChaeOk also discovers that the room contains a cell with children inside, and they are clearly being prepped for slaughter themselves. There's no other word for it. And they start to beg ChaeOk to save them. And she can't turn away from their desperation. I mean, how could you?
Oh, absolutely.
They're babies. So she starts to help these kids up into the vent. And then as they're climbing up, we see that this doctor is starting to round the corner, comes into the room. And so the only way that ChaeOk is able to conceal these kids' escape is by actually killing the doctor before he can alert the guards to their presence.
And saves all of their lives.
She does, yep. She saves all of them. They're all up in the vent, and now they're trying to get back out. And as this is all happening, we actually learn that the rickshaw puller was TaeSang. And beneath Sachimoto's chair was Juntaek. So they're successfully inside of the wall.
Right.
Sachimoto had used the excuse that he had to go find new paints, new supplies in order out in the town, and he was coming back. But he had so much to carry with him, he needed the rickshaw puller's help to actually unload it all, and then he would leave as soon as he was done.
And it was the guards that were like, we can't let you do that. And he goes, okay, fine. then you can talk to Director Ichiro about why all of this stuff has not been allowed in.
Mm-hmm. And he just is like, all right, well, make it quick.
Let's get on with it, please.
So as this is happening, Mr. Gu and Mr. Wong have made their way up a mountainside with a truck full of fireworks. Mm-hmm. And we're realizing now these are going to be detonated as the signal.
This is our signal, yeah.
This is our signal, which the time for has since passed. We're past 10 o'clock.
Right.
And in another scene switch, we see YoungGwan, the Japanese soldier, the Korean Japanese soldier, doing a headstand as all of his,
the people in the same barracks as him.
They're all sound asleep in their beds, and he's tripoding.
It's a form of torture.
Having
basically.
A rough night, yeah. They just, anyway.
So ChaeOk is leading those kids through the vents, like, to come back to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when TaeSang and Juntak have made it into the room where they're supposed to all meet. Mm-hmm. And that's when they realize it is after 10 o'clock.
So their timing is all sorts of mixed up. Yeah.
And they realize the signal didn't go off at 10, so this is why we aren't on the same page.
Right.
And as they're looking around, TaeSang notices there's an arrow next to the window, mm-hmm. and it's drawn as if it's pointing up. At the same time, JongWon, ChaeOk's dad, is on the rooftop, keeping an eye out. And as he's waiting, these Japanese soldiers come to the rooftop. Smoke break.
They're drinking on the job.
Just, and ChaeOk has made it to the opening of where this grate has to be lifted off. Mm-hmm. And she just knocks softly, and all of the soldiers hear it.
Right.
Because she knocks a couple times because, obviously we want to make sure that the message is getting across. And
she has no idea that there's Japanese soldiers up there.
Right. She can't hear them. It's not like they're being super loud.
She can't see out. Mm-hmm.
And as all of the soldiers have gotten up, they have their guns drawn. They're like, okay, what's going on? Who's here? And Jungwon, he steps around and is just like, hi.
Yeah.
Just me. Don't shoot me. I'm not armed. Like, he's distracting them, getting their attention.
Well, and his plan was clearly just to die for ChaeOk at this point.
Well, yeah, that's his daughter.
Because he had there's no way you make it out. There's 6 of the soldiers and 1 of you. Mm-hmm. And even if you're able to get your gun out, there's no way that...
There's still 5 others.
Yeah. So...
pointing at you.
That was kind of a moment.
Moment.
Yeah. Father's love for his kid.
Well, and as he's getting their attention off in the distance, fireworks start going off. Yeah. So all these fireworks are going off, and so it distracts the soldiers, but then it's also everyone else because fireworks are not allowed at all. And as the soldiers are distracted, Jungwon takes this chance and he's like, all right, we're taking out some of you, and just starts fighting, knocks several guns out. And as he's started this fight, out of nowhere, this knife just flies. And ChaeOk...
She joins in the brawl.
Han So-hee is such a great action actress.
Mm-hmm.
She's so good at it. And it's totally believable.
Yeah.
Like, I would not want to fight her. She would win every time. But she's so good at what she does. And she's helping her dad. And, they got pretty much... they're taking everybody out. She ends up picking up a rifle, and she's, like, trying to make sure that nobody can go after her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, her dad just screams her name, and a shot goes off. And she turns around, and a Japanese soldier falls to the ground, and this man that's kind of shrouded in the shadows just walks forward, and it's TaeSang.
Albeit a bit behind schedule.
And he even goes, I'm so sorry for being late.
And literal fireworks go off. Honestly, this moment was so needed just to relieve the tension of this whole episode, because I breathed a sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
They breathed a sigh of relief. he was excited to see her. She
Alive?
was just like, about freaking time you get here and pull your weight a little bit. So it was just such a necessary point, I think, in the show to just give us a little bit of breathing space, because everything has been so just uptight
And intense.
up to this point. Very intense, yeah. And this moment is just kind of like a balm.
Okay. And now we can go on to the next.
Yeah. Then we keep the tension rolling. Commissioner Ishikawa is seen receiving a phone call regarding this disturbance, and he starts to head to the bureau. And Lady Maeda sees the signal and basically knows that TaeSang has succeeded in infiltrating the hospital, because why else would this be happening?
Right.
But she comments and says it's beautiful.
So it's almost like she doesn't mind that there's chaos happening.
She admires him. I think she has an admiration for who he is and what he does and how good he is at it. And also that there is someone giving her husband a run for his money.
So she doesn't like him very much.
But our sigh of relief is also gone, because TaeSang and ChaeOk start to butt heads as he realizes that the people that he is supposed to be helping escape the hospital, that's not Myeongja. It's a group of kids. And he's looking at her in disbelief. There's a bit of Lee Young-jun in that.
Absolutely. Oh,
and
yes, there is.
He's just like,
Why?
This is not what we came here to do. You're jeopardizing everything. And
this was not the agreement.
This was not what we agreed upon. And she basically holds a knife to his throat and says, if you don't help these kids escape, I'm not going to help you find Myeongja. And she helps him find his humanity a little bit.
Well, and she tells him, this is their first priority. We have to get them out.
Right.
Like,
they're kids.
They're kids. Why would you want them to stay here, even if it is stuck in hiding?
Right.
And yeah, you're right. He's kind of just like dumbfounded almost, and just like, I'm sorry, you want me to do what now?
Well,
I don't understand.
That's not ever been his MO. He has always been in
survival,
self-serving mode. Yeah, purely out of survival, and that's just the way that everyone had to live in order to survive. Was you worry about number one, and there is no number two. So for him to be introduced to this new way of thinking for him by the one person in the world that could probably convince him of it,
right?
He's doing some reevaluating of his priorities,
right? Then we cut to Kato and Ichiro, and they are in that viewing area where down below they have this creature.
Yes, Ichiro is super excited to show his latest development in taming this creature.
Oh, we see that in this room, or this area where this creature's been trapped, basically, a group of prisoners has been sent in. And Ichiro begins to ring a bell, and the creature just goes for it, and she just kills all of them.
Pavlov,
yeah. And he goes, I'm going to train this beast to know who its master is, like who the master is.
Who feeds it.
And Ichiro just starts ringing the bell like a maniac. Like, he looks so scary like in that moment.
Like a kid in a candy shop.
Don't do that to the poor kid. Don't compare him to a kid. He's definitely like joined Kato's team of like almost in awe of this creature and the power that it can have.
I think the difference between the two is director Ichiro is looking at it as
promotion,
as power for him to wield, versus Kato, who is
obsessed with it.
Who's just obsessed with it in and of itself, not necessarily as something to use, but as something to protect. And so I think they have different interests at heart, but Kato knows, like, in this moment, that this is what he needs in order to continue forward and not have his work shut down again. But I don't think that this cohabitation would have much longevity to it.
No, I don't think so.
No. Someone's getting pushed in the cage. Character of the hour.
Oh, are we doing for both episodes?
I think we'll have to, yeah.
I think for episode 2 would be Juntaek. Juntaek. Yes, Juntaek, because yeah, he's a little skeptical about helping out TaeSang because he's like, I want you to help me out. But he's not going to just walk away either.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to help provide information. And he's going to be like, okay, yes, this is, if you're going to be using my ID, I need to know why. But then also, here's all the, important information that you need to know so that you don't get in trouble while you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to provide you with the things that you need. And I don't know. I feel like he has such an important part to play here. And even, I don't know that he's my character of the hour for episode 3. But he's super important in episode 3 as well. We don't know why yet, but you can just tell that he's super necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like he's so needed right now, and he calls TaeSang out as well. Of to be like, yeah, I know you don't feel this way, but like, do you know what you could do?
Yeah.
Like you actually could be very important for this.
Right.
I know you don't think so, but you could. So I think I like him for episode 2. Episode 3, ChaeOk. You're not wrong when you said she's the Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
She is, what you see is what you get, but also she knows where her priorities are. I know this layout. I know we've seen this before. I know we can stop this. And then finding the kids and being like, no, this is priority.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, like, killing the guy so that the kids can get away.
Right.
Helping her dad in a fight. Like, she knows how to be resourceful. And it's not just I don't know. She's a team player, but she's a leader as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really jealous of all of her moves because they're so good.
Catch us in a self-defense class next week. Just kidding. Learning all the moves.
I don't think I have the energy for that.
We would be so injured by the end of that.
You'd just walk in and be injured.
I think my character of the hour episode 2 is probably Miss Nawa. I appreciate her as the voice of reason and kind of the mother of the House of Golden Treasure. And I think episode 3, I like Mori as the comedic relief, but I think I like TaeSang's shift toward bearing other people's interests in mind. Because this is the first glimpse of that, I think, that we get in the show. Not just for ChaeOk, because that's sort of a different dynamic, but for his people as a whole. I think he has, there's shadows of that in some of his motivation by the end of the episode. Even though I think he's wrestling with it, especially with like those kids, because in the face of that situation, it's get out or die. But he's starting to be forced to reconcile the fact that he is abandoning his own people, by refusing to use the power that he has for good. So I think he's my character of the hour for that reason.
You mean he's actually starting to practice his humanism?
His humanism. Final thoughts.
Oh. episode 2, I really enjoy. I mean, we're only 3 episodes in, and so much has happened.
Well, it's a third of the show.
Yeah, the story has progressed so much. I mean, also because it's only 10 episodes long.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, episode 2, I love just him figuring out, hey, the comment about humanism. But he's like, maybe actually, like, that is something I actually
aspire to.
But because the ending of episode 2 of, like, get my stuff, like, I'm going in.
Mm-hmm.
But then in episode 3 is kind of tough. Just because there's a lot more
action.
Well, there's a lot more action, but there's a lot more that's been exposed of the atrocities.
Right.
Of, you know, the amount of people that have died from the anthrax, the horrific experimentation, and whatever cause they think they're doing. Like, it's
all in the name of, quote, science.
Right. And it's very intense. And I mean, we know that I'm a true crime junkie and I'm a little bit morbid in the head, but it's still very, very heavy. And so, what are your final thoughts?
I don't know.
Oh no.
I've hit the wall. Yeah, it's gone.
We didn't even have a moment where we were broken.
No, I don't. Oh my gosh, it's hard because there's so much information. Mm-hmm. This is such a shift from
the happy,
from What's Wrong with Secretary Kim.
Yeah.
In the sense that we have information thrown at us. There's so many simultaneous character arcs that are moving, and
because without them, the story doesn't go
in a
forward.
Condensed format.
Yeah.
So it moves at a much quicker pace, and it's action plot, wisp of romance, action plot.
Tiny bit of comedic relief.
Yeah, it's just all a very heavy style of storytelling, which I don't mind. I like, but it's a lot to try to process at 11 o'clock at night. I think I'm most excited to get into the creature, because we know that the creature has to have its own character arc.
Right.
Because of the sentience that's happened that we've established in episode 3. Yeah. So there's more to uncover. I mean, this creature is multifaceted. It's not just a killing machine. It's not a simple one-dimensional enemy to look at, in the sense that maybe the Japanese kind of are. Like, they're just bad guys. But then the creature has some kind of motivation. We just don't know what yet.
Well, and it was a creature that was forced to become that. It didn't. It was just a woman.
Mm-hmm. Who, in and of herself, has an interesting backstory.
Right, because you could just tell on the look on her face in episode 1 of just defiance. Mm-hmm. And so clearly there's a lot there.
The thing that was interesting, though, is none of the other prisoners were being let out to clean the facilities.
Yeah, so what
was her deal?
Right. Why was she allowed to wander around or
have free roam? So,
I don't know. Oh, a third of the way through already.
Almost. Like what you're hearing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any new episodes. We'd love to connect with you on our Instagram at The KDrama Show. For more behind-the-scenes content, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. Links are in the show notes. Thanks for hanging out with us on The KDrama Show with Ashley and Kim, and we'll see you next time.